So first and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining us today at the annual Palestine reception, co-hosted by the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians and the Liberal Democrats Friends of Palestine. It's truly an honour to have so many of you here with us, despite the horrifying situation on the ground in Palestine that does bring us together today. So yesterday, of course, the UK recognised Palestine, and though it's clear that this is not sufficient to end UK complicity, it's still important to recognise and acknowledge the self-determination of the Palestinian people. And the reason why it is so important is because language matters. And that does not just apply to recognition. It is deeply important for every changemaker to speak out in the strongest possible terms against Israel's genocide in Gaza. And it is very important that the Liberal Democrats have done this. And speaking of, may I now introduce our speakers today. Our keynote speaker, who will be arriving shortly, will be leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Davey. We will also be hearing from Tayab, Director of the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians and Head of International Law at Byman's LLP. Liberal Democrats Foreign Affairs Spokesperson Calum MP. Anne-Marie Simpson, Chair of the Liberal Democrat Friends of Palestine. Tom Morrison MP. And finally, Ehab Omar, co-founder of the British Palestinian Families. So without further ado, let's begin. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Tayab, Director of the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians and an internationally recognised solicitor advocate. He is also a partner and head of international law at leading and award-winning London law firm Byman's LLP. Thank you. Tayab.
I hate it when I have to hold a microphone, but it does remind me that I used to want to be a stand-up comedian. So if you feel like laughing through my speech, feel free. So look, first of all, thank you all for attending our reception today. And I'd also like to just mark it by, although Said's not in the room, it's a significant achievement for the Liberal Democrats Friends of Palestine to have the leader of a political party, particularly the Liberal Democrat leader, attend this event. And that really shows where we are in this discussion and where the Liberal Democrats are in this discussion. And as many of you may know, I'm a lawyer. As Jonathan said, I'm head of international law at Byman's LLP. So when I speak about Israel's actions, I do so in legal terms. And my legal opinion, based on the evidence we've gathered at the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians, is crystal clear. Israel is committing war crimes, and the body of evidence and expert opinion makes it inescapable to conclude that Israel is embarked upon a genocidal project in Gaza. At ICJP, we have collected over 150 first-hand witness statements, as well as video and photographic evidence. All of it has been gathered to a standard that would be admissible in British criminal courts. Together, it tells a harrowing, consistent story. But you know what? We're still humans when we gather this evidence, and we still have the emotions and feelings and the trauma that that evidence gives us. And sometimes, every now and again, it tells you a testimony or a piece of evidence really is so shocking that it just stops you. And just recently, a British doctor who worked in Gaza gave us a piece of evidence or some testimony that I can only describe as sport targeting. That's what he was describing in the injuries of children he was treating who were trying to receive humanitarian aid in Gaza. Now, I just want to relay his story to you. He explained that as he treated wounded children, he began to see a grotesque pattern. One day, all the children that were arriving in the hospital had wounds in their legs. The next day, children came in, but this time, all the wounds were in their torsos. And then the following day, it was in their arms. Now, his evidence was that this was no coincidence. It was the systematic targeting, the purposeful targeting of children who were 12, 13, 14, and 15 years old, shot deliberately in different parts of their body on different days as sport targeting, just because they were trying to collect aid to feed themselves in effectively a famine. This is not an allegation I'm making. This is sworn evidence I'm relaying to you. And so I must say, And I have to say it in these terms. Yesterday's announcement by the British government that it recognises the state of Palestine is in truth a distraction. Of course it's important. Of course I welcome the UK finally catching up to the majority of the world. But it changes absolutely nothing for those children in Gaza, or the 20 people at least that were killed today in Gaza City. And about recognition, Gaza already existed. It was a fact. In 2024, the International Court of Justice ruled that Palestine is a sovereign state, including Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank. All the UK has done is belatedly acknowledge a fact. Recognition means nothing if it's not followed by action. And so what does action mean? Action means ending UK arms sales where there is a clear risk they're being used to commit war crimes. Ending UK military cooperation, training and intelligence sharing with Israel. Sanctioning Israeli officials and entities complicit in atrocities and settlement expansion. Investigating British citizens, our neighbours, our friends, our families, who travel to join the IDF and take part in war crimes. And supporting the ICC and the ICJ as they pursue accountability, however politically inconvenient. But beyond action, there are obligations, legal obligations, that Britain is failing. Under the Genocide Convention, the UK has a duty to prevent and punish genocide the moment it knows there is a serious risk. The ICJ has already found a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza, and the evidence since has only deepened. Yet Britain continues to supply arms, provide political cover, and resist accountability. That is a failure of its most basic international legal duty. Under the ICJ's 2024 advisory opinion, the UK is required not to recognise, aid or assist Israel's unlawful occupation or apartheid practices. Yet Britain maintains trade agreements, welcomes Israeli leaders with red carpets, and does nothing to halt settlement goods entering our markets. This is a failure to comply with binding legal obligations. And under their own statute, a state party to the International Criminal Court, Britain has an obligation to cooperate with investigations into international crimes. Yet instead of backing the court's independence, the UK has actively undermined it, failed to assist it, and remained silent in the face of threats against the prosecutor, who happens to be a British citizen. That is a failure to uphold the very system of international justice that we, the United Kingdom, helped to build. And it's important to acknowledge that recognition did not happen in a vacuum. It came because of you guys, campaigners, civil society, and parliamentarians, including many, many of you in this room here today. I want to congratulate you because you refused to be silenced or intimidated or bullied by pro-Israeli activists and refused to let this issue be buried. The leadership of this party has shown courage and moral clarity where others have not, and that pressure played a vital role in making the UK's recognition and announcement possible. But recognition is only the beginning. We must also confront Britain's hypocrisy, demanding accountability for Russia in Ukraine, whilst excusing Israel in Palestine. We must go beyond words, but to meaningful action, ending the flow of British arms and components that are killing Palestinian civilians, refusing political cover for Israeli leaders complicit in atrocity crimes who are still welcomed in London, and investigating British citizens who travel to fight with the IDF instead of dehumanizing and criminalizing Palestinians and even protesters on our streets. Something, my friends, is fundamentally broken when our government will not apply the rule of law equally. So yes, I agree and I accept recognition is historic, but history will not only ask whether Palestine was recognized, it will ask whether recognition was a turning point towards justice, or simply words to ease the conscience of those politicians in Western states complicit in genocide. And that is where each of you here tonight come in. You have the power to turn recognition into responsibility and responsibility into action, to make sure Britain is no longer complicit in atrocity, but a force for accountability. Because, my friends, justice cannot be delayed any longer. We are losing lives daily. And the time for action for Britain, for Parliament, for the Liberal Democrats, and for all of us is now. Thank you.
I wasn't here today because I took a little trip to London for a certain flag-raising ceremony. at the Palestinian embassy. And we had a representation of Liberal Democrat peers there, and Layla Moran MP, who has made it, Neil, her agent will tell me how many years she's been doing this for, but trying to get immediate recognition of the state of Palestine. So yes, some people may say, what's the point? It's symbolic, whatever. It's an inalienable right of the Palestinian people for self-determination. They should not have had to fight for that. It should have been there already. Recognition of the state of Palestine. Most of the world does. Why did it take us so long? And it's fixing an historic wrong from the Balfour Declaration 1917 onwards, really. So it's definitely, I was trying to think of words to describe how I saw it, and I was thinking, well, it's grounding, and its roots. And I thought, no, they've had that all along. They've had that all along, so I couldn't come up with anything. But I'm really pleased with the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine, something Liberal Democrats have had in their policy for a very long time, and I think it's absolutely great. However, there's a genocide taking place in Gaza, and Ed has said it's a genocide too, and I cannot tell you how great that is for us as a party, because this has been going on for 2 years now. You could argue about it at the beginning whether it was, but it was always clear to those of us who have followed previous conflicts that Israel, following the awful, awful atrocities on October the 7th, I'm not taking away from war crimes committed by Hamas on that day, but we knew that the repercussion would be great. And we've seen what's happened in previous wars on Gaza. And so we were calling for a ceasefire. We wanted a ceasefire to happen then. And Ed was very early, not early enough perhaps in the minds of a lot of us. Sorry, Ed. But 12th of November, he called a ceasefire in 2023. It didn't happen, of course. But genocide it is. You don't need a court to tell you genocide is taking place, because otherwise, what is the point of the Geneva Conventions if you're going to wait for a court in many years to come to tell you there was a genocide? There is absolutely an obligation now on the UK and other countries signed up to international law, believe in human rights, to actually do something about this now. So recognition, great, but now we need action. We need action to stop the genocide in Gaza, and not just the genocide in Gaza, the apartheid, dispossession going on in the West Bank, the violence, settler violence that's going on there. We have a greater Israel plan that Netanyahu's coming out with. Wants to take a little bit of Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. So no, we need to show, okay, I've heard the story, only America can stop them. But we are not powerless. We can send a message. Britain has a responsibility, a historic responsibility to do something about this. So what I am really hoping now, that the Liberal Democrats are in so much better place to actually, with our 72 MPs, with our policy that we've got, with our policy being made by our leaders showing leadership, which the Keir Starmer hasn't on this, to go forward and use whatever they can do. Actually, I'll read you a little bit of my speech last night that I got cut off for. I thought I could get away with it, but I couldn't. So what I put, first of all, I did actually read Mahmoud Darwish quote, and many of you may know, or many of you may not know, but he's regarded as the national poet of Palestine, who died over 17 years ago. So bear in mind that these words were written a long time ago. So, the Palestinians are the only nation in the world that feels with certainty that today is better than what the days ahead will hold. Tomorrow always heralds a worse situation. And that's depressing. But look what we're seeing. In all the time, I started reading and learning about the injustice done to Palestinians in 1996, 97. And the more I read, the more I felt the injustice was there. And all I have seen is conditions get worse in Gaza, in West Bank, in Palestine. So we must change the reality for Palestinians. And we must give hope to Palestinians and Israelis that they can live in peace, dignity, justice, and equality. So let's pressure Keir Starmer. Actually, we must. This is Judy Connor, thank you very much. She's on our committee. This is my earlier draft. She said, stop, take out let's. We must pressure Keir Starmer to change UK policy and change the course of history. And so to all the MPs in the room, I can spot a few of them, please, can we have an opposition day to force a vote? That's something to leave that with you, but thank you.
And next up, we're joined by our first parliamentarian for the evening, Tom Morrison, who I've been assured, I've double-checked, is MP for Cheadle. And he is also Deputy Chief Whip for the party. So please join me in welcoming Tom.
Thank you very much. Thank you, friends, and thank you to the ICJP and Friends of Lib Dem Friends of Palestine for putting up this event and all of the hard work that you've done over the years on this very issue. I want to begin by acknowledging, actually Neil, could you pass this on? I want to acknowledge Layla, because like so many people in this room, Layla has shown dedication and leadership in speaking out for justice for Palestine. And I think the Liberal Democrats have been the most vocal party in calling for greater pressure on Netanyahu's government, and it's thanks to the work of Layla that has led that, so thank you very much. And I want to acknowledge everyone in this room here tonight. Your determination, your persistence, and your voices have made a real difference. The recognition of a Palestinian state was not inevitable. It happened because people like you refused to give up. That achievement belongs to you, and it gives hope that even at the darkest of times, change can come. And for me, this is not an abstract issue. Soon after being elected, I had the privilege of meeting Paddy. Now, Paddy is a doctor at Stepping Hill, it's a local hospital in my patch, and he spent 4 months working in Gaza, and I want to share some of his testimony with you now. So Paddy told me that I've seen children amputated without anaesthetic or pain relief, and I've seen children starve to death. I've seen unarmed men shot dead by snipers, with white flags lying next to them. I've helped put dead bodies in body bags while children watched and cried. I've seen hospitals run out of basic medication and people dying from simple and preventable infections. Every day I see and hear death and injury to the Palestinian people. Now, Paddy's words remind us that behind every headline, there are human lives, families, and for me, a new father, worst of all, suffering children. I'm constantly reminded of the strength and feeling in my own community. Since I was elected, I've received thousands of emails and letters from people in Cheadle, from every background, every age, every faith, all urging compassion, justice, and action. Different stories, but the same message every time, that every human life is of equal worth, and we cannot and we must not turn away from suffering. Now, those voices have shaped everything I say and do. Now, the situation on the ground in Gaza is heartbreaking. Families have lost their homes, children have been killed, and hospitals and clinics have been bombed. Innocent lives have been taken in what can only be described as war crimes, and every day humanitarian workers risked everything to deliver aid to people in desperate need. The suffering is immense, yet these teams, these incredible teams, continue to act with courage and humanity, refusing to turn away. Where others may run, they run towards the fire. Gaza has become the most dangerous place in the world for humanitarian workers. Hundreds have been killed and even designated humanitarian zones. And I know from my own family how difficult this is. My brother spent years in humanitarian relief, and I remember the immense worry that my mum and I would feel whenever he was late for a check-in. The fear that any phone call could be the last. And that fear is the daily reality for those trying to save lives in Gaza. And this suffering is the result of Netanyahu's genocide, and that is not a word that we use lightly. But deliberate policies and actions have caused mass starvation, destruction, and loss of life. And it's vital to be clear, this is the responsibility of that Netanyahu government. Friends, I know how heavy all of this feels, but I also know that despair is not an option. The cause of justice and peace for Palestine has always relied on people who keep on going, who keep on pressing, who keep believing that change can come. So thank you, not only for inviting me to speak tonight, but for everything you have done and continue to do. Your work matters. It's already made a difference. I truly believe without the dedication and hard work of the people in this room tonight, the UK government would never have recognised a Palestinian state this week. But that cannot be a full stop. We have more work to do. The hard work must continue until both Palestinians and Israelis are able to live in dignity, in safety, and in peace. Thank you.
Thank you again very much to Tom for your words there. We will be joined now by his parliamentary colleague. Calum has just joined us, MP for Bicester and Woodstock, and Foreign Affairs spokesperson for the party. So please join me in welcoming Calum now.
Thank you so much. And friends, thank you very much for inviting me to say a few words. It's a real pleasure to be speaking with you this evening on a day that comes after a very significant development in the long campaigning that many of you have done and that many of us have done. I know there was an event in London this morning, and I'm delighted that Layla was there to represent our party, but also in her own right. As many of you will know, Layla has put forward a motion in Parliament and for the recognition of Palestine every year since she was elected in 2017. And I know many of you have worked alongside her in that sustained campaign. So I'd like to, in her absence, raise a huge thank you to her for her tireless advocacy for the Palestinian community, and to all of you who have worked alongside her over a number of years to push forward the recognition of Palestine. It is truly a historic moment for the UK's relationship to Palestine, and something that I know that we all deeply welcome. I want just to say a few words about the experience over the last few months of representing the party's position in Parliament, and how we have been seeking to raise a voice for the concerns that so many of us deeply feel about what is taking place in Palestine. It has been frustrating, as I know so many of you deeply feel. As the party's Foreign Affairs spokesperson, on many occasions, I have been part of debates and events in Parliament where I have been speaking with David Lammy as Foreign Secretary or Hamish Faulkner as the Middle East Minister. And let me be clear, I believe that both of those men are truly committed to justice in the long run. But what has also been clear is that they have been far too cautious in leading the UK's approach over that period. I do welcome recognition today, but I still regret deeply that they've not been willing to go further in recognising what needs to be done in order to try to change the path of this Netanyahu cabinet and the actions that they have been taking. So we as Liberal Democrats will continue to push this government to take seriously its responsibilities. Now that a genocide has been recognised by so many, including our party, there are real obligations on the UK government which it is clearly failing to fulfil. So whether that is in reducing the risk that the UK is complicit in arming the Israeli military, and we know that the UK is still supplying component parts to F-35s, or whether it is continuing to supply other material that can be used in those areas, or training IDF forces. There are many ways in which the UK government is not filling up to its solemn legal duty to prevent the terrible things that are happening in Gaza. Furthermore, we know that this Netanyahu government has responded to the pressure of the international community by expanding settlement activity in the West Bank. And the intention to settle E1 is the latest example of that. And again, the British government has just been too slow to respond to that. Now, I don't want to make this evening about a litany of complaints about the government. You will have your own list. I look out at the group here this evening and see a group of people who I know are deeply committed to bringing about greater justice for the people of Palestine. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you, under the leadership of Anne-Marie, John, and others who have been trenchant advocates for the rights of Palestinians. Our party is a party that is grounded in a deep belief in the human rights of every single individual. And it's that belief that lies at the heart of our commitment to advocating for the rights of Palestinians. We want to see the conditions that will allow for more peace, more justice, and more safety for Palestinians and for Israelis in what has become an unbelievable level of conflict and destruction. So I want to say just a massive thank you to you for everything that you do in your communities and in our party to advocate for the Palestinian cause. I'm very humble and proud to have the opportunity as the Foreign Affairs spokesperson to speak on those matters in the House of Commons, and I look forward to continuing to do so in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Calum Miller, the Liberal Democrats Foreign Spokesperson. Next, we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by Ehab Omar. Ehab is a Palestinian from Gaza, and as well as his job as an engineer, he is also co-founder of the British Palestinian Families and advocacy and campaigns manager for Children Not Numbers. Please join me in welcoming Ehab.
Nobody told me I would be covering for Davey. Thank you for coming tonight. Thanks for the Lib Dem Friends of Palestine and the ICJP for inviting me to talk today. I carry stories. I only carry stories of the medics, the teachers, the aid workers, the men, children, and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our own humanity in Gaza. For us to see the world which we are leaving to our children in an actual picture. What's happening in Gaza is actually the world we all collectively decided to leave for our children. And we all take crossroad decisions: what to study, where to live, who to love, who to marry. But for Palestinians in Gaza, decisions take slightly different way. To stay at your home and be killed, or to be displaced and live in an open grave. You are doomed if you do, and you are doomed if you don't. Displacement is an ugly word. And I was talking to one of my friends, Sami, who hasn't been treated from his cancer for the last 2 years, sending me a picture of his belongings because he has been forced to leave his home in Gaza to a displacement place, area in the middle of Gaza, central Gaza. And you can imagine that. Mattresses, cooking pots, blankets, and maybe a tent that you will look at it and see it as a shroud. Who wants to live like that? Before coming here, in the way, I asked the children in my family in Gaza who has been displaced, what do you want? What do you want me to ask for? One of them said, I would like a football and be able to play in the street without the fear of being killed. The second said, I would like a birthday cake. My niece said, I would like to go back to school and study medicine. My sister-in-law said, I miss my kitchen. And my cousin said, I just miss having an ordinary coffee on my balcony. And I just realized that they're actually looking for ordinary things, simple things. Nothing fancy, just an image of a life which seems millions of years far now. There is no good occupation or a bad occupation. There is no legal occupation or illegal occupation. And there is no justified occupation and unjustified occupation. There is only an occupation. And occupation is brutal and it's ugly. An occupation which kills children because simply they claim they will grow up to be terrorists. An occupation which cuts water and electricity because this is what the title democracy allows you to do. And an occupation which weaponizes starvation because this is what the Gaza people can do. And the occupation which finds a simple solution to one of the most complex of problems. Destroy, kill, transfer, ethnic cleanse, and push everyone else to the deserts. Because they can't face the reality that it's an occupation. If we had the courage to call it what it is from the beginning, we wouldn't have been in this place. And now, at this point of time, it's not only the Gazans who are threatened. Each one of the liberties of us is being threatened, compromised at this point of time. And it's said, if there is a will, there is a way. Well, this genocide should have stopped a long time ago. If there is a will, the nations should have stopped and rallied to stop the war. Will exert political pressure, will enforce international law, will stop arming the aggressor, will sanction the occupation, and will push for a diplomatic solution. But for Palestinians, such will never existed. Beyond the words of condemnation, and now the words of recognition. Because we, as Palestinians, live in no man's land, in the Wild West, where there's no international law, no humanitarian principles, no rules of war exist. As for the superpowers, we as Palestinians simply do not matter. But we do matter. It's not only our children who matter. Every Palestinian child matters. And I will say something that the other side never say. Every Israeli child matters. These are difficult times. And the Palestinians are facing the unimaginable annihilation in this point of time. And it's easy for someone to say, what's the point? We already reached the point of no return as we see the ethnic cleansing happening on ground. But the tide is turning. What happened today is positive. The reality that you are all here together for Palestine and for the Palestinians in Gaza, that's positive. And there is a glimmer of light at the end of this dark tunnel. And we are not stopping. And we are not stopping. And we're not stopping till the occupation ends. And we are all the actors of change. And social change is driven by people, ordinary people, who can do extraordinary things. And the story hasn't finished yet. And we, together with the Palestinians, will write the last chapter. And there's only one ending, the promised ending, where justice will prevail in Palestine. Thank you.
A massive thank you to Ehab for those moving words. I think that it's so easy, even when you're advocating on human rights policies, to get lost in the politics. And that's even easier when so many in politics and the media seek to dehumanize Palestinian people. But I think hearing about children's wishes for footballs and birthday cakes is an important reminder of the humanity of what brings us all here today. So we are now joined by leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey. He needs no introduction, so I'll keep it short, but please join me in welcoming Sir Ed to speak now.
I'm very proud it's been the Liberal Democrats who campaigned for it like no other political party. But we know it's just a small step in a way. The big picture is stopping the fighting, getting the food in, getting the water in, getting the medicine in, getting the hostages released, and stopping the appalling actions, illegal actions on the West Bank. There is so many aspects of this where we still have so much to do. So as a party, we are utterly committed to pressurising that. Now, it was a small action, but it's probably good for my health when I decided not to go and have a banquet But it was a serious action, because I don't know about you, when you saw what was on our television screens over the summer, I just felt a sense of impotence. Oh my word, I can't believe this is happening, that they're getting away with it, that no one is doing anything. And I had originally intended to go, mainly just to support the king, because boy did he support that long. But talking to my wife Emily about it, thinking long and hard about it, I decided that it was a small thing, but we wanted to get the issue aired when Trump was here. The one person who could phone Netanyahu and say stop, who could phone the Qatari government and say get the hostages released, get Hamas to release the hostages.
And the Palestinian hostages.
And indeed, and get all these awful humanitarian catastrophes sorted out. Imagine having that power as one person and not using that. Quite extraordinary. So we want to make sure our voice is heard in that debate. It was one way of doing it. But we're also saying today that our Prime Minister should be in New York at the United Nations General Assembly. Having done the right thing on the recognition, along with Australia, Canada, Portugal, joining many other countries now, the vast majority of countries of the United Nations, our Prime Minister should be there pushing the case for the next step to keep the pressure on. And I'm really pretty angry and frustrated that he's not going. And to put it in context, when Rishi Sunak decided not to go in September 2023, that was one of the first times ever a British Prime Minister decided not to go. And what did Labour do? They attacked Rishi Sunak for not going. And now they're doing the same thing. So you can see we've got a lot more fights on our hands in Parliament to keep pushing this. And so we'll need your support as we keep doing that. So thank you for what you've helped the party achieve, speaking up for the rights of Palestinians, for a two-state solution, for what we have argued as a party for long and hard. But I'm afraid we've got a lot more work to do. We should never forget the people who are hurting, who are being killed, the children who no longer have parents, the children who have been killed. There's so much heartache there. So we've got a lot of work to do, friends. But just for a minute, let's take a moment to thank everyone for the progress we've made and commit to going further.